effectively, sort of, Will spent an awful lot of time working with the production designer to select
Yeah, I mean,
the right fabric.
it's how you compose an image with colour. If you're telling three stories at once, although they are connected by an overall theme, you don't want to disorientate your viewer, and it's just a simple way of separating these worlds.
To design the woman dress, we had different options for her, and I love to work with the silk, very, very thin silk material, and she was really beautiful, so she helped me a lot on the fitting. And we had different options also for the earrings, necklaces, and I worked together with a very good Hungarian jewellery maker.
In terms of photographing Our Lady, we really wanted to try and be as sort of as complimentary and as positive to her as we could. So we used a lot of fabrics. We shot through a lot of muslin and silk. It's an old technique that used to be used an awful lot back in sort of 50s to flatter a lady's skin tone. So we actually built muslin into our set design and into our environment in order to play on that technique, to soften the image. That's one thing with shooting digital, it can be a little bit hard at times, so we did try to accommodate for that.
Yeah, and I think it was very consistent as well in terms of how we approached every image, in terms of having textures, having depth. It's never better than when you're seeing something in a context which isn't just straight up in front of you. You want to put it in its own world, and creating these layers really, I think, helped that.
Yeah, and it did help to create depth to the environment. And one sort of challenge that you always have when you're shooting close-up intimate work, where within the bed, the relatively confined spaces, is being able to create depth from the world around your characters. We did try to use fabrics and also light provided by the sort of fire effects that we had in the background to really build that depth into the space and the environment.
So we're moving on to this setup here now, which is the partition. It's this scene here, this is what we've just shot now. So I'm just starting to sort of just see how it fits in the edit, just getting performance, movements. We had what we call like a storyboard edit. Now this is all sort of hand drawings, and what this allows us to do is to basically just start to sort of put the edit together in picture sense. It's very cumbersome and very rough, obviously, but what it does, it sort of just gives a structure so we can foresee that.
You know, CA, they know what they've got to do in delivering Rome 2, but we wanted to do their vision justice with what we were making. We wanted to get across all the details that they spoke to us about, the kind of exciting things that will be going on in Rome 2, and we wanted to convey that in this film. I think that's something, although you want to show game footage and people want to see game footage, that you can do with a live action trailer, is you can make it more conceptual and more about what it is you're trying to achieve on a kind of on a thematic level, to tell a satisfying story with where you feel that the audience feels that they are not missing anything, but yet suggest that there's this greater landscape. We had to, in 2.5 minutes, summarise everything that Rome 2 is going to do as a game, or at least try and suggest it.
Everybody wanted was to try and use as much sort of reality as we could and try and create as much of the world for real, and then use the CGI here and there to enhance that. This sort of this final day and this final scene with the young politician portraying his elder, that was where the CGI was really important to be able to help extend the environment and to sort of create the idea of Rome.
And it's difficult because you're seeing a Roman city, it's a matte painting. Doesn't matter how good it is. But one of the things we really tried to do is get people into the film before we showed them these wides, before we went to town. Didn't want to open on these grand wides, which is, is tempting to do, but just felt that if you were in the film, if you'd experienced it and you got into the story, then by the time these big matte paintings come up, you're not gonna notice them as matte paintings. You're in the story, they're just extending the world you're seeing.
And I guess you can see in the background there's sort of we were right in the middle of the Budapest city centre, so there was an awful lot of modern architecture and cars and everything around in the background. So it was very much a case of trying to select the way we were shooting, select our angles to really play to what we could sort of pass off as being what we can make authentic and make feel authentic. And you can see in the background of some of this, there's some very large green screens which we had to use to remove that background, and that was then replaced later with matte paintings that were done by the VFX team here in London.
I mean, the great thing as well, that you have this replacement and this extension, which you always plan to do, but there are things which, if you don't like, or if you feel there's an issue with which you can improve, and that's not in any way fixing it in post, but just pushing things that little bit further. For example, the shot where the older Senate is grabbed, he gives a fantastic performance in the take we used, and that was by far my favourite performance for him. However, one of the guys who grabs him, there was just a better take for him. So you had one take of the soldier and one take of the senator put together, so you combined both of their best performances.
We are enhancing the whole of the background to put the Roman Forum into the background of all of our green screen plates. When we get back to the office, we'll try and recreate Rome in a very basic 3D stage that will give us our depth, and it will allow the director to compose his shot, just get a really nice composition. And once we have that and we apply the final matte painting, we'll track it into the shot, potentially reproject it back onto 3D objects if there's any movement or parallax that's needed for these shots.
It's the last shot of the film, and it was obviously planned to come up over the bed, it goes to black, and then the doors open from black, and this guy's pulled over the top of you. That's planned. On the day, you see him being dragged through, and we're like, well, why doesn't he send his robe over the top of the camera? You'll get this great movement in front of the lens. It just adds so much dynamism. So that's a bit of inspiration on the day, and of just this cloak goes over the camera and it just opens up and it perfectly frames the young senator staring at him being dragged away, just before it closes up again, and then you reveal him. And I think that's just one of the things, really. It's this natural variation as much as preparation.